Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive, into agile change management.
Agile change management.
Yeah, so we're
Yeah.
going to be looking at excerpts from a really interesting book
Okay.
called Navigating the Tides of Transformation
Oh, cool.
by Amar Farag.
Okay.
And basically we're going to try to kind of figure out what agile change management is,
Yeah.
why it's super important these days, and give you some practical tips on how to actually implement it.
Right.
So yeah, get ready for some surprising stats.
Oh, fine.
And we'll even be delving into how agile principles connect to brain science.
Ooh, that's my favorite.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess to kick things off, the book starts by talking about this concept of the VUCA world.
Oh, yeah. The VUCA world.
Have you heard of this?
Absolutely. It's like the defining characteristic of business today, right?
Totally.
Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, but it's not just some trendy acronym,
Right.
right? This is the reality that businesses are dealing with every single day.
Oh, for sure. I mean, things are changing so fast.
Yeah, and the book really drives this point home with a pretty startling statistic.
Oh, really?
It cites a study that found that the average lifespan of S&P 500 companies has plummeted
Okay.
from 61 years
Wow.
to just 18.
Seriously, 18 years.
18 years, that's it.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That's like a blink of an eye in business terms.
It is, and it's a stark reminder of how quickly things can shift and how crucial it is for businesses to be able to adapt.
Totally. I mean, if companies can disappear that quickly, adaptation is not just a nice to have. It's essential for survival.
It's essential.
Right.
And that's where the book argues that traditional change management,
Uh-huh.
which, it tends to be slow, it tends to be rigid.
Yeah.
It can't keep up.
Okay.
We need a more agile approach.
Agile.
Yeah, one that's designed for speed and flexibility.
So you're saying that agile change management is the answer.
It's a key part of the answer.
Okay. So what does that actually look like in practice? Can you give me an example?
Absolutely. So one of the key principles of agile change management is this idea of iterative development.
Iterative development.
Yeah. So instead of trying to do a massive overhaul all at once,
Uh-huh.
which can be super overwhelming and risky,
Yeah, I can see that.
you break down the change into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
Each step is like an experiment.
I like that.
You test, you gather feedback.
Yeah.
You learn, you adapt as you go.
Okay, that's making a lot more sense than trying to change everything overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you have a real world example of a company that's used this successfully?
Yeah, so the book mentions this case study of a big retail company that wanted to revamp their whole online shopping experience.
Oh, okay.
And instead of redesigning the entire website in one go, which would have taken months and risk alienating customers.
Yeah, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Total disaster. They used an iterative approach.
Yes.
So they started by making small changes to a specific section of the website.
Right.
They tested those changes with a small group of users. They gathered feedback.
Okay.
And then they made adjustments based on what they learned.
Mhm.
And they just repeated this process, gradually rolling out changes to different parts of the website until the entire online shopping experience was transformed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So they basically iterated their way to success.
Exactly.
I love it.
Small steps,
Yeah.
big results.
So iterative development is one of the key principles
One of the key principles.
of agile change management.
Yes.
What are some of the other ones that are essential for surviving in this crazy VUCA world?
Okay, well, another core principle is this idea of self-organizing teams.
Self-organizing teams.
Yeah, so agile change, it's not about top-down directives.
Right.
It's about empowering teams to make decisions, take ownership, drive the change from within.
So it's more about collaboration and less about hierarchy.
Exactly.
Okay.
And these teams are often cross-functional.
Cross-functional.
Yeah, meaning they include individuals from different departments and backgrounds.
I see.
So you get that diversity of perspectives,
Right.
which leads to more creative solutions and a greater sense of ownership.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would lead to a more engaged workforce.
Absolutely.
When people feel like they're actually part of the process and their voices are heard,
Exactly.
they're more invested in the outcome.
The book actually highlights how a tech company successfully implemented a new product development process by forming these self-organizing teams.
Okay.
And these teams had the autonomy to make decisions about features, timelines, resources.
Oh.
They were empowered to experiment, learn from their mistakes, and adapt their approach as needed.
So they basically had the freedom to, like, figure it out as they went along?
Yeah, within a framework, obviously.
Right.
But they had a lot of leeway.
That sounds incredibly empowering.
It is, and it also enables them to respond to change much more quickly.
Because they're not bogged down by, like, bureaucracy and layers of approval.
Exactly.
They can just, like, adapt to new information or shifting market conditions in real time.
In real time.
That kind of agility is definitely essential in today's business environment.
Absolutely.
So we've got iterative development, we've got self-organizing teams. Are those, like, the key principles of Agile change management, or is there more?
There's one more I'd like to highlight, and that is responding to change.
Responding to change.
Yeah, this principle recognizes that while plans are important,
Yeah.
they are not set in stone.
Right.
In a VUCA world, you need to be prepared to pivot
Okay.
based on new information, feedback, unexpected challenges.
So it's not about, like, sticking to the plan no matter what. It's about being flexible and adapting as you go.
Exactly.
I like that.
It's a mindset shift.
Yeah.
The book emphasizes the importance of building feedback loops into every stage of the change process
Okay.
so that you're constantly monitoring progress, identifying roadblocks early on, and making adjustments as needed.
So it's about, like, constantly learning and adapting.
Constantly learning and adapting.
Yeah. Which is essential for navigating this, like, constantly changing world that we live in.
Absolutely.
Okay, so these principles are starting to make Agile change management feel a bit less abstract
Yeah,
and more practical.
good.
Are there, like, specific companies that our listener might be familiar with that have successfully implemented this approach?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So you've got Spotify, for instance.
Codify?
They utilize these autonomous cross-functional teams called squads.
Squads.
Yeah.
I like that.
And these squads have a high degree of freedom to experiment and make decisions,
Okay.
which enables them to respond to user feedback and market trends with incredible speed.
I mean, I use Spotify all the time, so it's interesting to hear about, like, their internal structure and how that contributes to their success.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Another example is Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah, they structure their teams around this two-pizza rule,
Pizza rule.
which basically means that teams should be small enough to be fed with 2 pizzas,
I love that.
ensuring they remain nimble and can innovate without getting bogged down by bureaucracy.
It's such a, like, simple but effective way to ensure that teams stay focused and efficient.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't feed your team with 2 pizzas, your team's too big.
Too big.
So, you know, the book also mentions something that I found really fascinating.
Okay.
This whole idea of the neuroscience of change.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it talks about how our brains are actually hardwired to resist change,
It's true.
even when it's for the better.
It's true.
That seems kind of counterintuitive.
It does, but it makes sense when you think about it.
So what's going on in our brains when we're faced with change?
Well, change, and even positive change, can trigger our brain's fear response.
Okay.
The amygdala, which is the part of the brain that processes fear and threats,
Right.
can go into overdrive,
Okay.
leading to feelings of anxiety, stress, and resistance.
So it's like our own brains are working against us when it comes to change.
It could feel that way,
That's wild.
but there's good news.
Okay, tell me the good news.
Our brains are also incredibly adaptable,
Okay.
thanks to neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity. Is
Yeah.
that like brain yoga?
Kind of. It basically means that with the right approach, we can rewire our brains to embrace change rather than fear it.
Okay, now that's a bit more encouraging.
Right.
So tell me more about this neuroplasticity and how it relates to Agile change management.
Okay, well, think about the Agile principles we discussed earlier.
Okay.
Iterative development, self-organizing teams, responding to change.
Right.
These principles can actually help make change less stressful for our brains.
Really?
Yeah. So, for example, by breaking down change into smaller steps, we create opportunities for quick wins.
Mm-hmm.
And those quick wins trigger our brain's reward system.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's like positive reinforcement for our brains.
Yeah.
Those small wins release dopamine,
Dopamine.
which is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and motivation.
Okay.
So it makes the change process feel less threatening and more rewarding.
So it's like we're actually training our brains to associate change with positive feelings.
Yes.
Rather than fear.
Exactly.
I love that.
Like brain hacks for change.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like instead of dreading change, we can actually start to look forward to those little wins and those little dopamine hits.
Exactly.
I mean, the book goes into like a lot more detail about like the connection between Agile principles and our brain's natural responses.
Yeah. It's a whole fascinating rabbit hole.
But I think the key takeaway here is that by understanding the neuroscience behind change,
Yes.
we can create change initiatives that are not only effective, but also more humane
Absolutely.
and less stressful for everyone involved.
It's about working with our brains, not against them.
Exactly.
Making change a more positive experience.
I love it. So we've covered the key principles of Agile change management
Right.
and how they relate to our brain's response to change.
Yes.
But I have a feeling that building an entire culture of agility within an organization
Yes.
takes more than just understanding these principles.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about knowing the principles, it's about living them.
Right.
It's about fostering a company culture
A culture.
that embraces agility.
So it's about shifting mindsets
Yeah.
and creating an environment where change is not only accepted but welcomed.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we even begin to create that kind of
Yeah.
culture?
But one of the foundational elements of an agile culture is psychological safety.
Psychological safety.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that mean in the context of like an organization?
So it's about creating a space where people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing their ideas,
Mm-hmm.
admitting mistakes without fear of punishment or humiliation.
Okay, so it's like creating a safe space for people to be like their authentic selves and to like take risks without feeling like they're going to get in trouble.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be essential for like innovation and creativity.
It's crucial.
Because if you're constantly worried about making mistakes, you're not going to be very open to new ideas.
Absolutely.
So how do you foster this psychological safety? Like, where do you even begin? Well, it starts with leadership.
Okay.
Leaders need to set the tone.
Okay.
They need to be open to feedback, admit their own mistakes,
Right.
and create an environment where it's okay to fail as long as you learn from those failures.
So it's about shifting from a blame culture to a learning culture.
Precisely.
Okay, I like that.
The book actually provides some really insightful examples of companies that have successfully fostered psychological safety,
Oh, really?
like Pixar.
Pixar.
Yeah, they have these renowned brain trust meetings.
Brain trust meetings.
Yeah.
That sounds intense.
It's not as scary as it sounds.
Okay.
These meetings encourage open and honest feedback, even on unfinished work,
Okay.
creating an environment where creatives feel safe to take risks and push boundaries.
Okay, so it's like a very different approach from the traditional, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions mentality.
Very different.
It's more about embracing vulnerability
Yes.
and recognizing that mistakes are an inevitable part of the creative process.
Absolutely.
Okay, so psychological safety is a great starting point.
It's foundational.
What other elements are essential for building this agile culture?
Another crucial element is continuous learning.
Continuous learning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agile organizations, they're constantly seeking to improve, learn from both successes and failures, and adapt to new information.
They're like learning machines.
Exactly.
Constantly evolving.
Yeah, they provide opportunities for employees to develop new skills and encourage experimentation.
So it's about creating a culture where learning is not just encouraged, but it's woven into the fabric of the organization.
It's part of their DNA.
Okay, I like
The book uses the example of Microsoft under Satya Nadella.
Microsoft.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So when Nadella took over as CEO, Microsoft was struggling to adapt to the rapidly changing tech landscape.
Yeah, they were kind of losing their edge a little bit.
Yeah, they were becoming a bit of a dinosaur.
Right.
But he led a cultural transformation, shifting the company towards a more agile and learning-oriented mindset.
So he basically turned the ship around.
He did.
By changing the culture.
Yeah, he encouraged employees to embrace a growth mindset, to be curious, to experiment, and to learn from their mistakes.
That's an inspiring example of how a leader can champion a culture of continuous learning.
A great example.
Yeah, and it shows that even big established companies can change.
They can adapt.
And adapt and become more agile.
Absolutely. It's never too late.
I love it. Okay, so all of this is incredibly inspiring.
Good.
But I'm sure our listener is wondering,
Yeah.
how do we actually put all of this into practice?
Right.
Where do we even begin with creating an agile change management plan?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And the good news is
Okay.
the book provides a clear roadmap for creating and implementing an effective plan.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think before we jump into that roadmap, we should take a break and give our listener a chance to digest all of this amazing information.
Sounds good.
And then we'll come back and we'll delve into the practical steps involved in creating an agile change management plan.
I'm excited for part 2.
Me too.
This is great.
All right, see you soon.
See you soon.
All right, so welcome back to our deep dive into agile change management. In part one, we talked about like the core principles of Agile, like how those principles can actually help us navigate this like crazy VUCA world.
Totally.
And we even touched on like that fascinating connection between Agile principles and brain science.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts.
But now I think it's time to like shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And like really get into the practical steps involved in like crafting an Agile change management plan.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so where do we even begin?
Well, the book provides a really clear framework for developing an effective plan.
Okay.
And it all starts with a compelling vision.
A vision.
Yeah.
Okay, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what does that actually mean in the context of Agile change management?
So it's more than just like a mission statement. It's a vivid and inspiring articulation of the desired future state.
So it's about like painting a clear picture of where the organization wants to go.
Exactly.
Why it's so important to get there.
It's about creating that shared understanding of the destination.
Okay.
Which can then guide everyone's actions and decisions.
Okay, so it's like a North Star.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A powerful vision acts as a North Star, providing direction and motivation throughout the change journey.
That makes sense.
The book actually cites the example of Lou Gerstner,
Okay, Lou Gerstner.
who became CEO of IBM when it was on the brink of collapse.
Yeah, that was not a good time for IBM.
Not a good time.
They were like the dinosaurs of the tech world.
Exactly. But he rallied the entire company around a vision of transforming IBM from a hardware manufacturer to a services-led company.
That was like a pivotal moment in IBM's history.
It was.
It's amazing how a clear vision can have such a profound impact on an organization.
It's incredible.
Okay, so we've got our compelling vision. That's our starting point.
Yes.
What's next?
Once you have that clear vision, you need to translate it into concrete actions.
Okay, how do we do that?
That's where SMART goals come in.
SMART goals.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
You know the acronym.
It's like specific, measurable, achievable, something, something.
You got it. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
But it's a super helpful framework for setting goals that are clear, actionable, and aligned with the overall vision.
Okay, so instead of just saying, like, we want to improve customer satisfaction.
Yeah, which is too vague.
Way too vague.
A SMART goal might be, we want to increase our Net Promoter Score by 10% in the next quarter.
Okay, that's much more specific and measurable.
Right.
And I can see how that would help to, like, keep everyone focused and accountable.
Exactly. The book emphasizes the importance of breaking down the vision into these smaller, more manageable goals that can be tracked and measured.
Okay.
It's about making progress visible and celebrating those small wins along the way.
Okay, so we've got our vision, we've got our SMART goals. What's next on our Agile change management plan checklist?
So the next step is to create an Agile roadmap.
An Agile roadmap.
Yeah, and this isn't like a rigid set-in-stone plan.
Okay.
It's a flexible guide that outlines the key milestones and deliverables of the change initiative.
So it's more of a dynamic framework
Exactly.
than a static document.
Exactly. The Agile roadmap is designed to evolve as the project progresses.
Okay, I like that.
It's about setting a clear direction while remaining open to adjustments.
Based on.
Feedback, changing priorities, new information.
That makes a lot of sense, especially in a VUCA environment where, like, things are constantly in flux.
Yeah, you got to be able to adapt.
Okay, so can you give me like a concrete example of like how an Agile roadmap might work in practice?
Sure. So let's say you have a software development team.
Okay.
They might start with a high-level plan, outlining the major features they want to release over the next year. But as they work through each iteration, they might discover that certain features need to be prioritized, or that new features need to be added based on user feedback.
Right.
So the Agile roadmap allows them to adapt their plan without losing sight of the overall goals.
So it's like a living document.
Exactly.
That's constantly being updated and refined.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have our vision, our SMART goals, and our Agile roadmap.
Yes.
Anything else we need to consider when creating our plan?
Yeah, so before you can actually dive into implementation, it's crucial to assess your organization's readiness for change.
Readiness for change.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds important.
It's essential.
So how do we go about assessing that?
The book recommends using some diagnostic tools.
Okay, diagnostic tools.
Yeah, to gain a clear understanding of your starting point and potential challenges.
Like what kind of tools?
So one of the classic tools is the SWOT analysis.
SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember learning about that in business school.
It's a classic for a reason.
Okay, so remind me, what does SWOT stand for?
So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay, so it's basically a framework for evaluating the internal and external factors that can impact an organization.
Exactly. It helps you leverage your existing strengths, address potential weaknesses, and align your change efforts with the external environment.
Okay, can you give me an example of how a SWOT analysis might be used in the context of like agile change management?
Sure. So let's say a company is considering moving towards automation
Okay, otter.
to streamline its manufacturing process.
Okay.
A SWOT analysis might reveal that one of their strengths is a highly skilled engineering team.
That's a great asset to have when you're implementing new technology.
For sure.
Okay, what about weaknesses?
Right. So a weakness might be that their current infrastructure is outdated and might not be able to support the new automated systems.
So that's like a potential roadblock that they would need to address.
Exactly. The SWOT analysis can also highlight opportunities, like
Oh.
a growing demand for customized products, which could be met more efficiently through automation.
Okay, so that's an opportunity they could capitalize on.
Absolutely. And of course, there are also threats.
Great.
Potential resistance from labor unions who are concerned about job displacement.
Yeah, that's a valid concern that would need to be addressed very carefully.
Absolutely.
Right.
So by identifying these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats up front,
Okay.
the company can proactively plan for the challenges and maximize their chances of success.
That's a great example of how like a SWOT analysis can provide like really valuable insights.
It's a powerful tool.
Are there other diagnostic tools that are mentioned in the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So another valuable tool is the PESTLE analysis.
PESTLE analysis.
Yeah, have you heard of that one?
I don't think so.
So PESTLE stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors.
Okay, another acronym.
Another acronym.
But it makes sense.
Yeah, so it's about examining the broader macro environment.
So it's like looking at the big picture and understanding those external forces that could influence the success of your change efforts.
Exactly. So for example, let's say a retail company is considering expanding into a new international market.
Okay, expanding internationally.
A PESTLE analysis might reveal, that the region's political stability,
Okay.
the economic outlook, local cultural preferences for certain products, the state of technological infrastructure, any relevant legal regulations, and even environmental considerations.
Wow, that's a lot to consider.
It is, but it's important to have that comprehensive understanding of the environment you're entering.
Right, because what works in one market might not work in another.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
PESTLE analysis is all about like understanding the external environment.
Yes.
What about internal dynamics?
Right. Well, the book also discusses force field analysis as a useful tool for understanding the dynamics of change within an organization.
Force field analysis.
Yeah, so this tool helps you identify the forces that are driving the change
Okay, the driving force.
and those that are resisting it, which are the restraining forces.
Okay, so it's about understanding the push and pull factors that can influence the momentum of change.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
for example, in a hospital that's implementing a new electronic health record system,
Okay, electronic health records.
the driving force might be the need for improved patient care and efficiency.
Yeah, those are definitely compelling reasons for change.
Right, but a restraining force could be resistance from staff who are unfamiliar with the new technology or concerned about the potential for errors.
Yeah, I can see how that could create some friction and slow down the implementation process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by identifying these driving and restraining forces,
Okay.
the hospital can develop strategies to overcome the resistance and create a more supportive environment for the change.
Okay, so it's about understanding both sides of the equation.
Yes.
The forces that are pushing for change and the forces that are holding it back.
Exactly.
And then figuring out how to like navigate those dynamics.
Absolutely.
These diagnostic tools seem incredibly valuable for like really understanding the landscape before you embark on like a major change initiative.
They give you that solid foundation to build upon.
Okay, so we've talked about SWOT analysis.
Yes.
PESTLE analysis.
Yes.
Force field analysis.
Yes.
Anything else?
Yes, one more.
Okay, hit me.
Stakeholder analysis.
Stakeholder analysis.
This one involves identifying everyone who's affected by the change or has a stake in its outcome.
Okay, stakeholder.
Stakeholders.
That's a pretty broad term.
It is.
It's not just about like employees and managers.
Right. It goes way beyond that.
Okay, so who are we talking about?
So we're talking about customers, suppliers, community partners,
Right.
regulatory bodies,
Okay.
anyone who's impacted by the change or whose support is needed for its success.
So it's about understanding that whole web of relationships and interests that surround any change initiative.
Exactly. And the book highlights the importance of identifying those with informal power.
Informal power.
The influencers.
Oh, the influencers,
Yes.
like social media influencers.
Well, kind of, but in this case, we're talking about the people in your organization who, regardless of their formal position,
Okay.
have a lot of sway over others. They might be respected experts, charismatic leaders, or simply well-connected individuals.
Okay, so it's about recognizing those informal networks and power dynamics.
Exactly, because those informal networks can be just as powerful as formal hierarchies, if not more so.
Totally. I mean, think about how, like, word of mouth can make or break a product.
Exactly. And the same principle applies within organizations.
Okay, so how do we identify these influencers?
Well, the book provides a really helpful tool for doing this.
Okay.
Stakeholder mapping.
Stakeholder mapping.
You visualize your stakeholders based on their level of influence and their interest in the change.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that work?
So imagine a matrix with 4 quadrants.
Okay, 4 quadrants.
You have your high influence, high interest stakeholders.
Okay.
These are your key players, the ones who are both highly influential and deeply invested in the change.
So these are the people you really need to, like, keep in the loop and on board.
Absolutely. Then you have high influence, low interest stakeholders.
Okay.
They might not be actively engaged in the change, but they have the power to derail it if their concerns aren't addressed.
So it's about keeping them informed and addressing their concerns proactively?
Exactly. Then you have low influence, high interest stakeholders.
Okay.
These individuals might not have a lot of power, but they are passionate about the change and can be valuable advocates.
So their enthusiasm can be contagious.
Absolutely. And finally, you have low interest stakeholders.
Okay.
These individuals might not require a lot of attention, but you still need to keep them informed
Okay.
to avoid any surprises or misunderstandings.
So it's about, like, tailoring your engagement strategies to the specific needs and level of influence of each stakeholder group.
Exactly. You're speaking my language.
Okay, and I'm assuming the book provides some guidance on, like, how to actually do that.
It does. It provides specific techniques for building buy-in from different stakeholders,
Right.
involving them early in the process, communicating transparently, addressing concerns head-on, and finding ways to co-create solutions together.
That's great advice.
And remember, Agile stakeholder engagement is an ongoing process, not a one-time event.
Okay, so it's not just about, like, checking a box.
Right. It's about continuous engagement.
It's about building relationships.
Exactly.
And maintaining those relationships throughout the change journey.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground so far.
We have.
We've talked about setting a vision, defining SMART goals, creating an Agile roadmap, assessing organizational readiness, and engaging stakeholders.
A lot of moving parts.
It is a lot.
But they all fit together.
They do. It's like a puzzle.
Exactly.
So anything else we need to include in our Agile change management plan?
One more crucial aspect to consider is change impact assessment.
Change impact assessment.
Yeah.
Okay, what is that?
So this involves anticipating the potential consequences of the change,
Right?
both positive and negative,
Okay.
and developing strategies to mitigate any negative impacts.
So it's about, like, thinking through all the potential ripple effects of the change.
Exactly. Not just the immediate and obvious ones, but the second and third order effects.
It's like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
Okay, so can you give me an example of what this might look like in practice?
Sure. So if a company is implementing a new software system,
Okay, new software system.
a change impact assessment would consider how it will impact employees' roles and responsibilities, how it will integrate with existing systems, and how it might affect the company's data security protocols.
So it's about identifying potential roadblocks and developing solutions before they become, like, major problem.
Exactly. It's about being proactive and anticipating those challenges.
And how do we address those potential negative impacts?
Well, that's where mitigation plans come in.
Mitigation plans.
Yes,
Yeah.
these plans outline specific actions to address those potential negative impacts.
Okay, so for example, if the new software system requires employees to learn new skills,
Yep,
the mitigation plan might include providing comprehensive training and support resources.
exactly. It's about giving people the tools and support they need to succeed.
That's a great example of how a proactive approach can help to, like, ease the transition and minimize resistance.
It's all about making the change as smooth as possible.
Okay, so we've talked about change impact assessment and mitigation plans.
Yes.
Anything else we need to keep in mind when crafting our Agile change management plan?
Yes. There's another important concept highlighted in the book.
Okay, hit me.
Minimum viable change. or MVC.
MVC, okay, what is that?
So it's a concept borrowed from Agile software development.
Okay.
And it involves implementing the smallest possible change that will allow you to test your assumptions, gather feedback, and learn before making larger investments.
So it's about starting small,
Yes.
iterating based on what you learn,
Exactly.
instead of going for like a massive sweeping change all at once.
Right. Which can be very risky and overwhelming.
It's like dipping your toes in the water before jumping into the pool.
I love that analogy.
It allows you to validate your assumptions,
Yes.
gather valuable feedback,
Yes.
and refine your approach before scaling up the change.
You get
Okay, so this is all starting to come together.
good.
We've got our vision,
Yes.
our SMART goals,
Yes.
our Agile roadmap.
Yes.
We've assessed our readiness for change and its potential impacts.
Yes.
And we're starting with a minimum viable change.
Beautiful.
What's next?
So now it's time to put all of these insights into a concrete action plan.
An action plan.
Yes. This plan will be your roadmap for the entire change initiative.
Okay, so we're getting down to the nitty-gritty details.
We are.
So what are the key components of this action plan?
Well, it should include a clear articulation of your vision, your SMART goals, the scope of the change your timeline, the resources you'll need, the risks you've identified, and your mitigation plan.
Okay, that's quite a list. Anything else?
Two more crucial elements that we haven't discussed yet.
Okay.
Your communication strategy
Okay.
and your stakeholder engagement plan.
Ah, yes, the people part of the equation.
Exactly.
That's where things can get a little tricky, right?
It can be, but it's also the most rewarding part.
And I'm assuming the book offers some guidance on how to, like, navigate those tricky waters?
It provides valuable insights on how to communicate change effectively and build a coalition of support among your stakeholders.
Okay, well, I'm definitely eager to dive into those topics. But before we do,
Yeah.
can you just remind me why these people-centric elements are so crucial for the success of Agile change management?
Absolutely. So remember, Agile change management is not just about processes and tools.
Right.
It's about people.
People.
It's about bringing people along on the journey, engaging them in the process, and empowering them to be active participants in the change.
So it's not just about telling people what to do, it's about involving them in the process.
Exactly.
And making them feel like they're part of the solution.
Exactly.
Okay, well, on that note, I think we should take another quick break.
Okay.
And then come back refreshed and ready to explore the nuances of communication and stakeholder engagement in Agile change management.
Sounds good. I'm ready for part 3.
All right, so welcome back to our final part of this deep dive. You know, where we left off, we were talking about like how important the human side of change is.
Absolutely.
Like communication and stakeholder engagement. Those are like make or break elements of Agile change management, right?
Couldn't agree more.
So let's dive into those a little bit deeper. You know, what does the book have to say about communication in the context of like Agile change management?
So the book emphasizes that communication, it's not just like a one-time announcement.
Right.
It's an ongoing conversation.
Okay, a conversation.
Yeah. And it needs to be iterative, transparent, and responsive.
Iterative communication.
Yeah.
Okay, can you give me like an example of what that looks like in practice?
Sure. So imagine a company rolling out like a new customer relationship management system, a CRM.
CRM, okay, yeah.
So using an iterative approach, they wouldn't just send out one mass email announcing the new system.
Right.
They would have a regular cadence of communication, keeping stakeholders informed about the progress at each stage of the implementation.
Okay, so like frequent updates.
Yes. Frequent updates.
Using multiple channels.
Multiple channels.
To reach different audiences.
Exactly.
And like transparently reporting on challenges.
Yes, it's about being real with people.
Right.
Not trying to sugarcoat things.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It helps people feel like they're part of the process.
Exactly.
And not just like passive recipients of information.
And it builds trust, which is essential.
Totally. And, you know, the book also really stresses the importance of two-way communication.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not just about like broadcasting information.
No, it's a dialogue, not a monologue.
Okay, a dialogue.
Agile change management is about that back and forth.
So how do you create that dialogue?
Well, you need to actively create feedback mechanisms.
Like what kind of feedback mechanisms?
Surveys, online forums, focus groups.
Even just like one-on-one conversations.
Absolutely anything that allows stakeholders to share their thoughts, suggestions, and concerns.
Okay. And importantly, like acting on that feedback.
Yes, that's crucial.
Not just listening, but like actually doing something with the information you receive.
Exactly, because Agile is all about adapting and responding in real time.
Right. So if feedback reveals that people are confused about an aspect of the change,
You clarify.
you clarify if stakeholders express concerns about the impact on their work.
You address those concerns directly.
You address those concerns directly.
Yeah.
You make people feel heard
And valued.
and valued.
That's the key.
So do you have an example of a company that's like really good at this two-way communication thing?
Yeah, the book mentions Salesforce and their idea exchange platform.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
It's a great example of two-way communication in action.
So how does it work?
So customers can submit ideas for new features or improvements to the platform.
Okay.
Salesforce employees review them,
Okay.
and the most popular ideas actually get implemented.
Wow, so they're actually listening to their customers.
They are, and it's a win-win
Yeah.
because customers feel valued.
Yeah.
And Salesforce gets this constant stream of innovation from the people who know their product best.
It's like crowdsourcing innovation.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a great example of two-way communication.
Yeah.
But, the book also advocates for transparency and vulnerability in communication,
Oh, yeah.
which seems a bit counterintuitive.
Right.
Like, aren't leaders supposed to project an image of strength and confidence, especially during times of change?
That might be the traditional approach.
Okay.
But today, authenticity resonates much more strongly.
Authenticity.
People want to see that their leaders are human,
Right.
that they face challenges too.
So it's not about pretending that everything is perfect.
No, it's about being real,
Okay, being real.
acknowledging the often messy nature of change.
Because let's be honest, change is messy.
It is.
It's rarely a smooth and seamless process.
And when leaders are open about those difficulties, it actually builds trust.
So it's about being vulnerable and showing that you're not afraid to admit when things aren't going according to plan.
Exactly. The book cites Buffer, the social media management company.
Buffer.
Yeah, they practice what they call radical transparency.
Radical transparency. That sounds intense.
They publicly share company financials, salaries, even their mistakes.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, I can see how that would create a culture of trust and accountability.
absolutely. Because if you try to hide things, people assume the worst.
Right. It breeds suspicion and distrust.
Exactly. Transparency, even when it comes to challenges, demonstrates strength.
It shows that you're not afraid to confront those challenges head on.
Exactly.
So transparency, vulnerability, authenticity.
Those are the key ingredients.
Those are the key ingredients for effective communication and agile change management.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I think another really important point that the book makes is the importance of clearly explaining the why behind the change.
Oh, the why is crucial.
Yeah, because change for the sake of change is just chaotic.
It's pointless.
People need to understand the purpose, the rationale, the benefits.
Exactly. Yeah. Connect the change to the organization's mission values and strategic goals.
So it's about painting that bigger picture.
Yes.
And helping people see how the change will benefit them personally and the organizations as a whole.
Absolutely. The book actually discusses Zappos's transition to holacracy.
Holacracy.
Yeah. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I don't really understand it.
It's basically a self-management system.
Okay.
It's a pretty radical departure from traditional organizational structures.
Yeah, it sounds pretty out there.
It is, and Zappos knew that it would be a huge shift for their employees.
Right.
So they invested heavily in communicating the why,
Okay.
emphasizing how holacracy aligned with their core values of employee empowerment and fostering innovation.
So they made sure that people understood the rationale behind the change.
Exactly, and that helped people get on board.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that Simon Sinek quote.
Oh, yeah.
People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
That's a good one.
It's so true.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've covered communication in depth,
we have.
which is like a huge part of agile change management.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about stakeholder engagement.
Okay.
What are some key takeaways from the book on that front?
So the book emphasizes that stakeholders, they're not passive recipients of change.
Right.
They're active participants who can make or break your initiative.
Okay.
And engaging them effectively is an ongoing process, not a one-time event.
So who are these stakeholders again?
It includes customers, suppliers, community partners, regulatory bodies, anyone who's affected by the change or who has a stake in its outcome.
And it also includes those influencers that we talked about earlier, right?
Oh, yes, those influencers are crucial.
The people who may not have formal authority,
Yeah.
but they have a lot of influence over others.
They're the ones who can really sway opinions and behaviors.
Okay, so the book provides that stakeholder mapping tool
Yes,
to help us visualize those different stakeholder groups.
exactly. It's a great way to understand who your key players are.
Right, and how to best engage with each group.
Absolutely.
But how do you actually build buy-in from those stakeholders?
Well, the book suggests 3 key strategies.
Okay, 3 strategies.
Number 1, involve stakeholders early and often.
Okay, early and awful.
Don't spring the change on them at the last minute. Get their input from the planning stages onward.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It fosters a sense of ownership.
Right, when people feel like they've been part of the process from the beginning,
Exactly.
they're more likely to support the outcome.
Absolutely. What's number 2?
Okay, number 2.
Use storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah, create compelling narratives
Okay.
to make the change relatable and memorable.
Okay, because humans are hardwired to connect with stories.
Stories are powerful.
A good story can definitely be more persuasive than a dry presentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and what's the 3rd strategy?
Number 3, address concerns and resistance head on.
Okay, don't just ignore or dismiss them.
Yeah.
Listen empathetically.
Yes.
Find common ground.
Find common ground.
And co-create solutions.
Co-creation is key.
So it's about turning potential resistors into collaborator.
Exactly.
That's a powerful approach.
It is.
Any examples of companies that have done this well?
Yeah. The book talks about Lego.
Lego? Yeah, they turned their business around in the early 2000s by engaging their customers.
Their customers.
Their most passionate stakeholders
Right.
in the product development process.
So they basically asked their customers what they wanted.
Yeah, they listened to their feedback and they incorporated it into their product design.
And it worked.
It worked brilliantly.
It's amazing what can happen when you listen to your stakeholders and involve them in shaping the change.
Absolutely. It's a game changer.
Okay, so we've talked extensively about communication and stakeholder engagement.
Those are the people-centric elements of Agile change management.
They are, and they're crucial.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle.
Okay, what's that?
Measurement.
Measurement.
Yeah, we need to know if our efforts are actually working. Right. How do we measure success?
That's where key performance indicators or KPIs come in.
KPIs, I've heard of those, but can you explain what they are in the context of Agile change management?
So KPIs are measurable values that track your progress toward your goals.
Okay, so they're basically like metrics.
Yes, metrics that tell you how you're doing.
That makes sense. So instead of just saying we want to improve employee morale,
which is too vague,
you'd set a specific KPI we want to increase employee satisfaction scores by 15% in the next 6 months.
Exactly. That's a SMART KPI.
SMART KPI.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
It's that SMART framework again.
It's everywhere.
It's like the golden rule of Agile change management.
It is. And when it comes to KPIs, it's important to choose ones that are truly meaningful and aligned with the goals of your change initiative.
Okay, so what are some examples of KPIs companies might use for change management?
It really depends on the specific goals of the change.
Okay.
But the book gives some good examples. If you're aiming to improve employee engagement, you might track employee satisfaction scores, turnover rates, or absenteeism.
Okay.
If it's about customer satisfaction, you might look at net promoter score, customer retention rates, or the number of customer complaints.
Makes sense.
And if it's about improving productivity, you might measure output per employee cycle time or defect rates.
Okay, so it's about finding the metrics that best reflect the impact of the change.
Yes, the metrics that tell the story of your progress.
Okay, so we've identified our KPIs. What's next?
Then you need to track those KPIs regularly and use that data to guide your decisions.
So it's not just about collecting data, it's about using it to make informed decisions.
The book suggests using dashboards, analytics software, or even regular reports to monitor your progress.
Okay, so it's about creating a system for tracking and analyzing your KPIs.
Yes, and making sure that information is visible and accessible to everyone involved in the change initiative.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's about using data to steer the ship and make course corrections as needed.
I love that analogy.
So a project team implementing a new software system might use a dashboard to track KPIs like user adoption rate system, uptime, and customer satisfaction.
Okay.
And by monitoring these in real time, they can quickly identify any roadblocks and address them.
So it's like a feedback loop.
Exactly, a constant feedback loop that allows you to adapt and adjust as you go.
That's so valuable, especially in a VUCA world.
Absolutely.
But measuring KPIs is only one part of the picture, right?
Right.
We also need to evaluate the overall outcomes of our change initiatives.
Exactly.
So how do we do that?
Well, the book emphasizes the importance of conducting post-implementation reviews, or PIRs.
PIRs.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard of those.
Think of them as a debriefing session after
Yeah.
the change has been implemented.
Okay, like a lessons learned session.
Exactly. You gather data from various sources.
Like your KPIs.
KPI surveys,
Right.
interviews, performance reports,
Okay.
and you analyze it to understand what worked, what didn't, and what lessons you can learn.
So it's about taking a step back and assessing the big picture.
Yes. And it's not just about identifying successes and failures.
Right.
It's about learning from both.
Okay.
Every change initiative, whether it's smooth sailing or encounters bumps along the way, offers valuable lessons for the future.
That's such a great perspective. It reframes those inevitable setbacks
Yeah,
as opportunities for growth.
exactly.
Okay, so let's say we've implemented our change, we've measured our KPIs, we've conducted our PIR,
Yes,
and we're feeling good about the results.
that's great.
How do we ensure those changes become embedded in the organization's culture?
That's a million-dollar question, right?
Yeah, because launching a new initiative is one thing, but making it a sustainable part of the organizational culture is another.
It's a whole other level.
So how do we make those new ways of working the norm?
Well, one key strategy is celebrating successes.
Celebrating successes.
Yeah.
Okay, so when people see that their efforts are actually paying off,
Yes,
it reinforces those positive behavior
exactly.
and builds momentum.
It creates a positive feedback loop.
It's about acknowledging achievements both big and small
Yes.
and making people feel appreciated for their contributions.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about celebrating wins.
Right.
It's also about acknowledging and learning from setbacks.
Yes. Embrace that growth mindset.
Okay, so when something doesn't go as planned,
Yeah.
don't shy away from it.
No.
Discuss it openly.
Openly and honestly.
Figure out what happened.
Yes.
Extract those valuable lessons for the future.
It's all about continuous learning.
And that ties into the book's emphasis on continuous improvement, right?
Absolutely. Sustaining change is about fostering a culture where learning and adaptation are ongoing processes.
So it's about moving from a project-based mindset
Yeah.
to a continuous improvement mindset.
That's perfect.
Agile change management isn't about checking boxes and moving on.
Oh.
It's about creating an adaptable, resilient, and constantly evolving organization.
That's the goal.
Wow, this has been an amazing exploration of navigating the tides of transformation.
It's a great book.
I've learned so much,
Me too.
but it's a lot to process.
It is. There's
Yeah.
a lot to unpack. But remember, the beauty of Agile change management is that you don't have to do it all at once.
Right.
Start with one principle, one tool, one strategy, and build from there.
That's great advice. And I think this book is a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to dive deeper into this topic.
Absolutely. It's a must-read for anyone navigating change.
So before we wrap up, I'd like to leave our listener with a final thought.
Okay.
The book discusses several diagnostic tools for assessing an organization's readiness for change.
Right. SWOT pestle force field analysis.
If you had to choose one to start with,
Yeah.
which would it be and why?
That's a great question. It really depends on your context and your goals.
Okay.
But I think starting with a SWOT analysis
SWOT analysis.
is a great way to get a holistic view of your organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay.
It's a solid foundation for any change initiative.
SWOT analysis it is.
There you go.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Agile change management.
That was fun.
It was so much fun. I hope you found it as insightful and engaging as we did.
Me too.
Change is a constant,
It is.
but with the right mindset and tools,
Yes.
we can not only navigate it,
You can.
but thrive in it.
Absolutely.
So until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
I love it.